from here, I want to see what other people's perception of. I would say the biggest takeaway that I had yesterday, like, I mean, it was obviously depressing, like losing a bunch of games, and then I played off stream and I won some games. And my main takeaway after like being on both sides of it is it feels like jungle is just not very fun to play currently. I think that that's the biggest issue right now with playing the role. Like, there needs to be more depth in what you're able to do. The fact that everyone is just full clearing is weird, right? Like, it's like they brought back full clear meta because everyone full clears so efficiently now that there's almost no point not to full clear. Whereas before, if you were like a jungler that didn't clear Krugs well, it's like, dude, never go to Krugs. If you're at Elise and you're doing Krugs in your first clear, you're fucking over the game, you know? I mean, maybe if you're going for like a 3 camp red side into mid gank and you want to hit a specific timing and you don't want to show top side, maybe then it was okay to do your Krugs. But it actually felt like the camps had different values, where now you kind of clear all the camps at a similar speed. So it means that most junglers are just trying to get level 4 before they do anything. And then also, like, crab spawns so late that you're going to be able to full clear into crab on every jungler. And you don't have to worry about like, oh, if I full clear and I'm 5 seconds slower than this enemy jungler, I'm not going to get that crab and he's going to double crab me. Is that okay for my matchup? Like, am I going to just take the L and do this anyway based on my lane states? Like, this was just something that you had to balance as a jungler playing, where now you don't have to balance it anymore. You know, it's still like, obviously you still can't go to crabs that you can't contest, that you don't have prio for, or that you're like not able to get safely, where you don't know where the enemy jungler is. Like, that's still not a thing. But like, realistically, just the fact that everything is so streamlined, it's become a lot easier to jungle, but in a bad way, because I mean, I think that there's ways you can make jungle like easier to manage, but then also be a complex role with a lot of decision making. And I think the decision making is the main thing that's lacking right now in jungle. Like, a lot of things that are core to being a jungler, right? Understanding how to punish gank timings. Somebody is gonna gank top, you know it's coming, your top laner's not backing off, you're not in position to counter gank it. I'm gonna take his Gromp, I'm gonna take his Wolves. Now it feels so. Already this was a little bit nerfed, and the reason why this was nerfed beforehand was because if somebody died, they like if a jungler died, they got back on the map way faster, right? Like, you get the movement speed buff when you die in League now, early game. So if somebody died, you weren't able to counter jungle 2 camps if you weren't like already on the Gromp or on the Wolves by the time that they were, you know, dead, or by the time they were already like making the play, because you had to account for the fact that they'll be able to get to their camps quickly. It was something that I noticed quite a few times while playing on my challenger grind. Was I was playing versus junglers where I would be like, oh, this guy just like suicide ganked bot, died, got 2v3, died. I'm going to take his like Gromp and his Wolves and he's going to be out of the game. And I realized after a while, it's like, no, you're just taking the Gromp. You're not taking the Wolves in this situation, because of the fact that he will be back on his camp too quickly for you to actually be able to do it efficiently. That was number 1. Number 2, like, it feels like the jungle pets, like, it's very hard to feel the differences between the jungle pets. And what I'm worried about with the jungle pets is I feel like everyone might just default to like the green tank shield pet on like every champion, which is not supposed to be the idea, right? Like, the idea is supposed to be that, you know, some champions are going the blue pet that value the movement speed. Some champions are going for the red pet that value the poke and like the damage. And then like tank champions are going for the green pet. My interpretation after like playing with all of them is it feels like the only pet that's actually noticeable is the green pet. That's the pet where it feels like, oh, well, I'm actually having this shield, you know, like I got like a little mountain soul buff now. Cool. Like a shitty mountain soul buff, but you get the point. That was the only one that I felt like it was actually noticeable. Like the red pet, you're like, damn, I'm gonna do extra damage, but you look at the damage, it's like 100 damage. You don't even notice it in your combo. Like, you're not killing somebody and you're like, damn, bro, that's because of the pet. Where when you had like different smite upgrades, you were feeling like that, right? Like, that was like, oh shit. And obviously the pet is now divided into like some strength of the pet and then some strength for the smite, because the smite is still becoming like a shitty chilling smite. But it just feels like both feels super insignificant now. That was my first changes. But here's a post that somebody else had on jungle changes. I think the sustain change is interesting, but one thing to consider is like, so the sustain change is supposed to be one of the big ones to the jungle, and this is supposed to make it so that junglers are not as abusive, and you can't just like go gank a lane then come back, do a couple camps and end up full HP, right? Like, they want to remove that from the game, which I think is good. I think the healing was just too broken before. I think the problem is that if their goal is to have more champions be viable in the jungle, having champions be just lower HP is just a worse situation. Like that just limits the amount of champions that are going to be played, because there's still going to be champions that are going to clear at full HP, right? Like Hecarim is still going to clear at full HP super fast no matter what you do, unless they start hitting like him specifically and they start nerfing the actual champions that have sustain. Those champions are going to be super viable, right? So if you have a champion like Bel'Veth that doesn't have the sustain, that, you know, doesn't have as fast of a clear as Hecarim, and you're just supposed to, it's like, oh, he can kind of clear his jungler a little bit faster, but he's going to be low life, and then you have a champion like Hecarim that's able to just power through the camps, I think that most people are just going to end up defaulting in high elo to like the champions that have the sustain that can already that can just bypass that problem. You know, like you don't need to deal with like the fact of like, oh well, everything can kind of clear. Sure, everything can kind of clear, but there's just going to be champions that are going to be higher life while clearing as well, and it's going to actually gate the jungle even more than before. Okay, not a bad queue. My estimated was 16 minutes 49, 6:37 on the queue. Not bad. Okay. Before I get in, there are some things I'd like to talk about as a low GM jungle main. Pets. I do like the pets, and the new smites are cool. Last patch was basically 90% blue smite since red smite was nerfed. Yep. But I do like the other options as they are all currently viable. Krug's huge change. Yep. Clear faster. Krug change is nice. It feels less annoying to do Krugs. I mean, it always felt bad like clearing the Krugs and having to wait for them to like spawn and like be kiting them and waiting for the camp. Like, I don't know. I always thought that was pretty bad. Now onto my thoughts about this new jungle change. To stay, this is probably the biggest nerf for jungles. It's Smite, Grump, Crab do not heal, and the only sustain you get is from your pet killing camps. You get really low from doing your clear, getting invaded on. I know players didn't like a jungler ganking, getting choked to 1 HP and doing a couple camps and be healthy again, but it feels like the only way to sustain is to kill Krugs, Raptors with your pet. Maybe buff Gromp, Wolf sustain. I mean, they want this to be in the game, right? Sustain is nerfed, like, for a reason. Counter jungling, you do more, leash indicators. All right, let's start with the clear portion. The clear right now is extremely flowcharty. Every jungle full clears before crab since the crab change. Every jungler hits 4, ganks do crab, vice versa. After first clear, it takes longer to full clear in general. Don't know if this is what they want, but right now, full clearing is definitely worse. I mean, full clearing is worse, but it's worse than it was if you were a good full clear like jungler, but it's just better. Like, it's just easier to full clear. Like, full clearing is now better in relation to the game than before. Leash indicators, okay? This is straight up nerf. The area where you do the camps is significantly much smaller than the last patch. It makes no sense why the jungle camp is at the center of the leash indicator when majority of these camps are surrounded by terrain. You don't have a lot or any room to kite camps, so it's basically a huge nerf for range junglers, especially if you include the sustain nerfs. You also can't safely do camps. Yeah, play Kindred, bro. Kindred is like a completely different champion after these changes, by the way. The nerfs to counter jungling combined with the fact that like you have to like sit within the camp and you can't kite the camp all over, huge nerfs to Kindred. And this is the thing, is like they don't compensate Kindred in any way. It's not like Kindred was like Omega S tier broken. I mean, I think Kindred was pretty strong, but like Kindred just getting a huge nerf out of nowhere because of like indirect nerfs to the jungle. Or direct nerfs to the jungle, indirect nerfs to Kindred. It makes no sense to me. It's like, I feel like Kindred is something that you want to have like in at least a playable spot. Like, you don't want it to just be complete dog shit, but clearly they just don't value the champion. They think that the champion is bad. Look, they're gonna start valuing the champion once Pyosha gets his Kindred skin and they're trying to sell it. Then they're gonna buff Kindred because they're gonna be like, bro, we gotta sell this. Because, yeah, I mean, money talks. It is what it is. Huge nerf for range junglers, especially if you include the sustain nerfs. You can't safely do camps if you get invaded on. I know they don't want blue Gromp to be done together, but this just straight up feels bad. Make the leash indicator bigger or something, because this feels really clunky right now. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, it feels really bad to not be able to kite your camps. You can still kite them towards the end. Like, the patience range is smaller, right? But you can just still kite them at the end of doing your camp. You just have to be good about understanding like how many more autos your pet is going to do, combined with like how much damage you have to put in so that you're able to pull your camps to your other camps. Like, you can still pull your camps while you're moving, you just can't multi-camp is the main one. Counter jungling, I think this is the worst change. I think this is the worst change to the jungle. This is something that was purely like skill expressive, and they just took it out of the game for zero reason. I don't think any laners cared about this at all. Like, no laners were asking, oh, can we get like counter jungling nerfs? Like, the reason people like, I think the sustain nerfs make sense. Like, that was something that pissed people off. I don't get this at all. I don't understand why you'd remove one of the core parts of counterplay in the jungle. You know, that's like saying like, that's like if in bot lane they were like, yeah, once the wave is past the middle point, you do less damage to the enemies. So you don't want people pushing their lanes anymore. So you just want everyone just sitting it with a neutral lane and just like farming it. Like, it just seems very, very strange. I don't understand it at all, because I thought that it was one of the best parts about jungling. You do more damage to your own camps, aka less damage to enemy camps. This makes no sense to me. It's like Riot wants you not to not counter jungle. Not counter jungle. Yeah, he means not counter jungle. And with the sustain, slower clear, it sometimes feels unrewarding to take enemy camps. Yeah, it feels horrible to take enemy camps. Also, because the AoE of the pet, you can barely leave the small camp alive the majority of the time. When you clear the whole thing. I mean, you automatically clear the whole thing. It's part of the patch. Didn't read that part of the patch, but yeah. Jungle feels extremely boring to me right now. It feels really bad. It's definitely weaker than the last patch. I mean, it's fine that they nerf jungle. I don't mind the jungle nerfs as much as like the thing that was always good about jungle is if they nerf jungle, like they make the jungle worth nothing, then it like enables ganking junglers. So like there would always be like a push and pull where they would like, they're like, oh, jungle's too OP. Like, and when jungle is too OP, that means the junglers are carrying the game. They have too much carry potential. So they would nerf that. And then it would be like ganking junglers would come back. So you'd have like Rek'Sai and Elise and all these champions popping up. Jungle is extremely boring right now. It's definitely weaker than the last patch. And you have less creative pathing. A lot of AD junglers are building Ravenous Hydra because the sustain and wave clear to help them. I mean, Ravenous Hydra is just broken. I think that people are building Ravenous Hydra because they think the item is just too good. It's only been a day, but here are my initial thoughts. What does everyone else think? Yeah, I mean, I think that they're pretty accurate thoughts. Pretty accurate.